Hi and welcome back to Love on the Brain. I'm your host, Kay Van Dunk, and I help independent women who are single, divorced, or widowed find their soulmates while staying true to their high standards. In each episode, we dive into a question you may have about love, share some insights, and then reframe it with an affirmation or ask formation to help you lift your spirits. If you haven't already, please subscribe and leave a great review on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on. Your reviews help other amazing singles find this podcast too. Okay, let's jump in. It's a new year, so I know the first thing a lot of people do in the new year is set an intention or a goal or a resolution of what they want to do, be, or have, or accomplish this year. And I wanted to do something a little bit later in the month once a lot of the other resolutions have died out, or maybe you're recalibrating to kind of figure out what it is you truly want. To address one of the most common New Year's resolutions out there about love and dating. I know that there's people out there who set goals for, wanting to go on a certain number of dates or wanting to maybe even meet their soulmate. And the pressure to find someone or have a perfect relationship is really something that you're doing to yourself. With starting fresh mentally in terms of what you want for the year or what you wrote down as a resolution, I know that may include having a new partner or maybe even finding your soulmate. And just realize that can add some unnecessary stress to your life, which I'm sure you might find a little odd for me to say because I do have the Soulmate Blueprint Wishlist where it goes in depth and in detail on how you can itemize and really idealize what you're looking for in your perfect mate. But in a way it's different because it's not setting a deadline or putting a timeline behind it. So the old way of setting resolutions would be you make a list of everything you want to accomplish. You tell yourself that it has to happen by New Year's Eve or else you failed at it. Or at least it makes you really depressed and maybe even a little bit more reticent to set a goal next year or even to add that same goal back in for the next year. And you need to release those limiting beliefs. Release some of those expectations. Take some of that pressure off of yourself around love. Everything happens in its divine timing. And there are certain things that you can definitely put a deadline on, like you want to lose some weight and be a little bit fitter and healthier this year. Of course, that's something you could accomplish immediately. But when there's things when it comes to something like love that's a little bit more nebulous and it requires somebody else and their input as well, that's when things can get a little bit challenging. So the new way we can look at setting resolutions for this year and going forward is focus more on resetting your mindset than about setting an arbitrary deadline for when you need to be in a relationship. A huge part of this podcast has been about resetting your mindset in the moment. When your mind starts going to a place that's negative, reeling it back into somewhere more positive. That's the same thing we're going to do when we're setting intentions. Because starting fresh or setting resolutions in whatever year you're listening to this podcast in isn't about finding someone immediate. It always goes back to aligning with the energy of your soulmate and attracting that soulmate to you. So because you're trying to align with your soulmate is always trying to align with you. There's always that area of magic that we have to be open to where things are percolating, things are moving, even if you can't see it, right? Kind of like the hands behind a clock. You can see the clock ticking from 1 to 2, but you don't necessarily see all the gears behind, grinding away, constantly moving, everything's moving forward. You just see the very slow movement, and that's where we can get a little caught and feel like nothing's really happening. But as long as you're open and receptive to love, it'll bring love to you when the time is right. This episode, we're not going to focus on a specific question because there's so many different resolutions people set around love. We're going to focus on just finding the balance we're going to focus on shifting from a really, really rigid way of being to setting an intentional goal. This is the year that you lean into support. Get support. Could be me through my coaching, which is always in the show notes, to identify any blind spots or subconscious blocks. It could be getting really, really mindful about the people that you're speaking to about dating and what you're saying about dating and what they're saying to you that could be blocking you from stepping into that alignment. It could also be something as simple as making sure that you're not on websites that don't make you feel too good about yourself. Tweaking your social media algorithms so you're not seeing terrible news about people in crappy relationships, and making sure you're seeing more positive things. This is the year that we really start fine-tuning and getting in line with the love that we want mentally and emotionally. You want to meet your soulmate. That doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be speed dating. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to say yes to every date that comes your way. But anywhere that you've been blocked before, look at how you can shift past that a little bit. Maybe it does mean saying yes to a friend who's wanting to set you up. Maybe it does mean that you're setting up an online dating profile. And we're going to set space for love to naturally flow into your life, for you to magnetize your soulmate to you, rather than say, I need my soulmate here by New Year's Eve so we could be dancing as the ball drops. That's nice, but don't let that be your metric of success. Your metric of success is doing the work that you need to do mentally so that you could be open and ready when your soulmate shows up. So the affirmation that we're going to be focusing on anytime these thoughts come up about what needs to happen in 2025 is, how will I attract my soulmate in 2025? And that's, how will I attract my soulmate in 2025? Take some of the pressure off of yourself. Give yourself room for organic, authentic connections to develop. Give yourself room to get a little messy and emotionally dig into things that maybe you haven't before, so you can really open up space for your soulmate energetically. I work with my clients on attraction techniques that I don't necessarily always touch on in these podcasts. So if you're interested in having me hold space for you with some coaching, I'd love to be in touch. My details are in the show notes. Before we close, I love to focus on gratitude because it is the highest vibration of all. So think of one thing that you're grateful for in this moment. As always, I'm grateful that you tuned into my podcast and love you for listening. And remember, when love is on the brain, asking better questions can lead to better results.